Hello viewers, welcome to this particular lecture on microbial spoilage of food. In this particular lecture, I shall be talking about different aspects of contamination in vegetables, fruits, milk and other dairy products, cereals and different other byproducts, egg and alcoholic beverages. I shall be talking about the microbes that cause the contamination and the different ways by which we can prevent them or we can reduce it. To start with, vegetables are basically crops which contains mostly water, and they are of course leafy or sometimes non-leafy in nature, but they have moderate to low percentage of carbohydrate and protein. That means 8.6% of carbohydrate, protein is around 2%, fat is very low, mineral is also relatively higher, and also there may be other elements present in these vegetables. There are different means by which these vegetables may be contaminated. They may include the aerosols, the bioaerosol falling on the leaves, they will contaminate with bacteria, or it may come from the different seeds which are contaminated with bacteria, or it can come from soil entering the crop plants through their root, or sometimes it can be with the water, or even it can be with the agricultural equipment which we use. And of course, there may be the insect vectors which can cause the damage to these crops, and these bacteria and virus can enter, and they remain inside the vegetable crops. There may be different types of organisms that normally contaminate the vegetables, which may include the gram-positive like the Enterococcus, the gram-negative like the Escherichia coli, the yeasts like the Candida or Deboromyces, or even it may include the molds like Aspergillus, Penicillium, Fusarium, Geotrichium, etc. And they are all developing inside the vegetable or on the surface and may have more than one organism at a time. As for example, if we consider some specific diseases, one such disease is the soft rot of vegetables. This vegetable crop or the leafy crop will be invaded by a bacteria called Erwinia. And this Erwinia, these are the bacterial cells which will enter through the gap in the cuticle and will be entering into the subepidermal cell and will form colony and reproduce over there and may remain for a longer period. But soft rot at the end of the day may also be caused by physiological deficiency, and it is actually the polygalacturonase activity. If it is too high, then naturally the rotting is very faster. So naturally, if there is by any means we can reduce the activity of these enzymes, polygalacturonase or hydrolase or pectinase, if we can reduce it, then naturally the shelf life of the crop can increase. Based on this particular principle, the flavor saver tomato was developed, which had a longer shelf life than other tomato variety. Coming to the infection of molds. Now normally the molds are invading the leaf surface. These are the colonies of molds on the mustard leaf. And sometimes these mold spores are transmitted through fruit fly or Drosophila. But once inside the epidermal surface, they will grow inside into the cortex and produce conidia. And this conidia will germinate, produce a mycelial mesh inside, and then they are cut up by the air and come out and produce thick-walled spore called sclerotia. In this particular condition, they may remain for some time. That means they may overwinter and again invade another crop plant. So this is the cycle. We call it summer cycle and winter cycle. But at the end of the day, the quantum of disease develop inside the crop. Here it is bean or broad bean. Now, as a matter of fact, I told you that there are different ways by which these contaminating organisms may come, and they include the soil, they include the manure, they include the fertilizer. Along with this particular contaminants, what is important, it may also induce pollution, and general pollution can also induce physiological stress in the crop plant. So basically, this mechanized harvesting may reduce the disease, but at the same time, while harvesting the crop, there may be some damages. And so the crop is harvested, but there is some injury through which the bacteria and fungi will enter and will come into the human gut through these vegetables. So that is not also good. A very important factor is proper storage, because if we can store it properly, then naturally this particular contaminating bacteria and fungi will be low, and this type of plastic containers which is not allowing any air might reduce the aerobic organisms. Of course, there may be threat of anaerobic ones. So basically, if we can be more careful in harvesting the crop, in processing it and in storing these particular crops, the contamination of vegetables can be removed or reduced to a remarkable extent. Now coming to fruits which are close to vegetables, but their percentage of water may vary. It may be around 85%. Carbohydrate content may be higher because of high sugar content, 13%. Protein is almost the same, that is around 1%. Fat is low, 0.5%, and ash content and mineral content is also low. But what is important, sometimes these fruits, they do have organic acids like malic acid, like citric acid, and so naturally the pH is low. And in this particular lower pH, the acidophilic organisms can grow and can contaminate the fruit. A very important example of fruit is banana. Now banana normally is invaded by different species of yeast, and whenever we take it, we always do consume this yeast, but because they are not that much harmful, we don't face the problem. But when it comes to maize, this maize is contaminated with penicillium, and actually this particular disease is blue rot because the spores are blue in nature. If it is in case of penicillium, there is no harm because there may be antibiotics produced like penicillin. But if it is aspergillus, which is black rot, there may be the aspergillus toxin or aflatoxin, which is cancerous. So there lies the problem. Or sometimes it may come as, in broad bean. This is a broad bean where there is the infection of downy mildew, and this downy mildew is nothing but the spores of Phytophthora. So apparently we consider these beans might have some dust, but actually it is fungal spore which we take in if we are not cleaning it properly. This is a very common picture where you can see aspergillus spores, the black spores of aspergillus growing on onion, and very often it can come into our gut and may impose problems of aflatoxin. So it is the black rot. This is a peach fruit which is invaded by geotrichum, and these are the geotrichum colonies which has created soft depressed areas, and this particular contaminated peach is not good for our intestine. So how can it be prevented? It can be prevented in the early harvesting. If we keep the fruit little bit in the refrigerator or refrigerated condition, these microbes can be less. And at the same time, if we take enough care about harvesting it, the damage will be less, so later contamination can be reduced. Now coming to the next part, which is the milk and milk product. Now milk primarily is contaminated through infection of the udder of the cow, and it can also come from the equipment, it can also come from the contaminated hands of the milkman. So basically human interference to a great extent is responsible for contamination in milk and milk product. And one such important contaminant is the Pseudomonas. These are the Pseudomonas bacteria or Pseudomonas bacteria coming from the udder in the milk. It may also include the gram-positive bacillus, which is also causing infection in the cow as seen in the udder. These are the udder infection caused by bacillus. But when it comes to Pseudomonas aeruginosa, it actually can cause cardining of milk. So this cardining is not good. This card is poisonous, because if it is not contaminated, then this card is good because it has lactobacillus. But if it is Pseudomonas causing cardining as seen here, then it is bad for the gut or bad for the intestine, or may cause loss of water in the form of diarrhea. Now, very commonly, human interference can cause infection of the milk, and they include the Staphylococcus, Bacillus, Micrococcus, Klebsiella, Serratia, Streptococcus, and mind you, all these bacteria mostly comes from human hand. So basically, if we can clean our hand before milking or before processing milk, to a great extent this bacterial contamination can be prevented. Pasteurization can prevent bacterial infection or bacterial contamination. But pasteurization does not prevent the endospores, and these endospores may remain in the pasteurized milk sample, causing destruction of the milk. One important byproduct of milk is butter, and butter actually is spoiled by this organic acid produced by Pseudomonas, which is called isovaleric acid. And this isovaleric acid is produced by this Pseudomonas petrifaciens, which is also isolated from butter, and it causes degradation of fat. We call it lipolysis, and it increases the rancidity, and this rancidity increases in this tropical temperature, which might be low when the temperature is less. That means refrigerated condition storage is very important for butter or butter products, and this will prevent this rancidity of butter caused by Pseudomonas fragi. Now coming to the very important product, milk product, which is the cheese. Cheese can be cottage cheese. A common experience is the infection of alkaligens, which is producing a slimy layer on the cheese. We call it slimy card. Of course, this slimy card can be removed, but that doesn't mean we have removed all the bacteria. And when it comes to alkaligens apparently will not cause severe infection, but may cause stomach upset when it is inside human body. Clostridium butyricum is present in ripened cheese, and it produces butyric acid, which is reducing the pH and harmful for the gut or intestine. Ghee is another milk product which is also contaminated by mold, and it changes the texture, and this mold can easily be prevented through proper packaging or storage. Ice cream, we all like it, but have we ever thought that the ice cream container, if proper hygienic condition is not maintained, will contain different bacteria, and that also includes salmonella, causing stomach upset or food poisoning. Sometimes we like this processed ice cream called fried ice cream, but the oil with which this particular ice cream is fried may contain Pseudomonas, may contain salmonella, and they are the probable source of bacteria in ice cream. Now we come to another important food product, which is egg. Apparently when we see the egg, we do not really see minute cracks, but if these cracks are there, then naturally these cracks will allow the entry of bacteria like salmonella, and they will spoil the egg, which is definitely harmful for us, and it may also contain Cladosporium spore, which is also causing stomach upset. So basically when we buy the egg, we should be careful enough that there is no hair crack or there is no minutest crack in the egg shell. Now coming to different bread products, cereals. The bakery products, they do produce bread which may be contaminated by mucor. This is quite apparent that the mucor sporangia is easily seen, but sometimes it is not seen. We call it ropey bread. Ropey bread is caused by bacteria like Bacillus subtilis or Bacillus licheniformis, which we don't see. But when we consume it, there will be food poisoning. And these are the bacillus which is obtained from bread, causing ropiness of the bread. And mind you, bacteria may be there, but if it is only present in certain concentration, the infection will be there. In this case, we call it 10 to the power 7 CFU or colony forming unit, like these units. If it is there in this particular percentage, there will be infection of bacteria. Sour bread, apparently sour bread, because of low pH, bacterial concentration will be less, but there may be yeast contamination in sour bread, or there may be sometimes lactobacillus growing in sour bread coming to our intestine. Cakes which we prepare from milk, flour and also egg may be contaminated by bacteria. And this bacterial contamination will change the texture, which also include the Pseudomonas. Biscuits, which are bakery products, apparently it is produced from the bakery, it will not have any contamination, but because of poor storage, because of insect vector like this cockroach, there will be bacterial contamination. How to prevent this contamination? Preventing this contamination is rather easy. We have to store it in low moisture. We have to have some mechanized, non-human interfering mechanism by which these foods are processed and stored. And at the same time, we must be careful about the expiry date as per the FAO license. If it is too close to expiry, we should not buy it, even if the package is all right or intact. Now coming to the next important aspect, which include the different alcoholic beverages, and these alcoholic beverages include beer, wine, etc. One important source of contamination is lactobacillus. There may be organic acid producing gluconobacter, acetobacter, and this yeast species called Megasphaera cerevisiae. And they apparently will be there in the bottle because they can tolerate the glycerol stress or low pH, and they will be present in beer, and if we consume this spurious beer, there will be loose motion or stomach upset. Of course, this can be prevented through proper processing, and this include the microbial quality check. What is done? It is normally through gram staining or through the testing of catalase and also the testing of fermentation ability. We can detect each and every individual contaminating species, which include the lactobacillus, which include the streptococcus, which include the leuconostoc. So all these contaminating species can be separated and characterized before the alcoholic beverage is bottled. And that is very important for a brewery in order to maintain standard of its alcoholic beverage. Coming to wine, wine actually may be contaminated by mold because very often wine is prepared in households and they may contain aspergillus or penicillium, and they may be there in the bottle and they can tolerate that acidic pH. And another important household product is the pickle. This pickle may be contaminated by mold or fungi or even bacteria, which is already there in the fruit from where, or the vegetable from where the pickle is made. And because of poor storage, this bacteria will grow. And what is the remedy then? The most common remedy is to ensure the quality of the product which we produce and increase the amount of preservative, maybe through acetic acid, because acidic pH will reduce all these contaminating organisms. In conclusion, we can say that microbes are present everywhere. Bacterial spores, fungal spores are present in air, and they may contaminate different fruits, vegetables, milk product, even alcoholic beverage. So what we should do to prevent it? We should reduce this contamination either through proper processing, proper storage, and of course minimizing human intervention, because these are dirty hands which contains different bacteria, different fungal spore which we don't see, but apparently when they are coming into food material, they will contaminate it. So we have to reduce this intervention in order to produce good quality, microbe-free food material. Thank you.